Members of the task force, we are now live.
Thanks, Chris. Welcome everybody to the Southwest Task Force. Attendance has been noted by the Deputy Clerk. Rules of procedure. I'd like to just remind the committee that that are viewing public of a few procedural rules for our virtual meetings and operating as efficiently as possible. All members will be muted for the meeting to reduce feedback. All web cameras for members shall be turned on. Staff will be requested to join the video meeting should the need to answer any questions the members of council arise. Any member of the committee should indicate they wish to speak by pressing the raise hand button on the participant list screen, bottom right-hand side. In the event of a connection service interruption, if it should occur, that affects quorum of the committee, we will recess the meeting for up to 15 minutes to regain quorum. If quorum is not achieved, the meeting will be adjourned. The clerk staff will lower the hand once it's been recognized by the chair and you've had your speaking opportunity. So without further ado, are there any declarations of conflicts of interest? Any members of the committee, are there any declarations of pecuniary interests or items appearing on the agenda? Okay, moving forward. 3, the presentations of delegations. Members, we have one delegation for tonight's meeting. Barbara Walsworth, please come forward to commence your delegation on item 4.1. Please note that you will have 10 minutes inclusive of any questions. Welcome, Barbara. You're gonna have to unmute your microphone for us though.
There we go.
There we go.
Hi, good evening, everybody. There was some familiar faces I just saw, which is kind of nice. So that's kind of good. Anyways, the reason I wanted to speak to you tonight is because I have just been voted in as the chair for the Sheltered Neighborhood Association. Just happened last weekend. My main reason for coming back and being a participant in the sheltered organization, I was really concerned about with the community center going forward and the new school and the library. I wanted to make sure that the neighborhood had a say in what amenities were going to be there and that we were going to get the things that were required. I know that there was something submitted quite a number of years ago, and I looked at some of my documents I have about 2015 about some of the things that we would like to see in the community center. And we've talked about the amenities outside in the fields and so forth. I'm just wondering if that is documented someplace. I know I have a copy of it, but I'm not too sure whether it is in the last master plan for the Southwest sports complex or not, if it's in there or whatever. But I just want to make sure that we are going to be part and parcel of that. Since there's going to be a lot of partnerships going on with the school and with the library, that we're all going to have the needs met. We're going to maybe share facilities, so we need to talk about that too. So that's basically why I'm here tonight. There are 2 other areas that I would like to talk about. And one is with regard to the football field. And it looks like the last drawings I saw, there was the football field and there was another one that was a little bit smaller. Is that, I don't know if that's correct or not. Anyways, I'm just wondering if the smaller field could be made where we have a track around it, a running track of some type put into one of the amenities that is outside in the fields. It's not a high school that's going in, it's an elementary, but we're thinking of the whole community and the uses that could be made of the track. Right now, there is one at Assumption College, but it is not necessarily open to us to go and use. And if we're developing this, then it would be nice to have a track also available someplace. And I'm just wondering also whether we had talked about the baseball diamonds, and I know they have been reconfigured. And I'm just wondering, is it possible to go back to the very first? I'm not too sure why they were reconfigured. I don't know if it had to do with the archaeological digs going on and there was something found and it had to be juggled around. Is that still the case, or can we go back to that large wagon wheel type of thing again so that we get the 300 yards that is necessary to host a lot of these baseball major tournaments? Anyways, that's my major concerns, and that's what I wanted to bring up to you. And I'm also hoping that when we have our very first meeting next Monday, that I am going to put forward the fact that I would really like to be part of the task force. I've been with this ever since the very beginning, as some of you already know. So we'll see what happens there. I know that I've got to go through certain procedures, so we'll see what happens. Anyways, is there any questions, or that's my major concern?
So are there any questions, if time's permitting, which I think we have lots of time left? So it sounds to me that there aren't any questions. Barb, I have some questions into the reconfiguration of the wagon wheel as well.
Okay.
I think at some point we had asked to find out what the configuration, if there is a possibility of it going back to the 300 foot fences. I don't know if a report has been completed on that. I think that that's something that could be considered, but I would need to send that out. Not sure exactly how to go about that.
Okay.
But I have made a note here that will be brought up. Does anybody want to make any comments about the football field and the tracks that she's asked about?
Yeah, I can certainly add some input to that. So, hi, Barb. Nice to see you.
Hi, Brian.
Back in the time when it was originally designed, the input we got for phase 2 actually involved the neighborhood association, which you're probably aware of, Barb.
Yeah.
And at that time, the city was in the midst of making 2 artificial fields, one at Kiwanis and one at Bison's.
Yes.
So at that time, based on the tracks we had there, the proximity to Lions Park, which is not too far away in the West End, with another track there. And at that time, we also had access to Assumption College through the joint use agreement. It was felt the track wouldn't be needed as part of this project. So that was the feeling at the time. I'm not saying it can't change. I'm just saying that was the rationale back in 2015 or whereabouts. There was an overkill of track. There really wasn't a demand for it. The neighborhood association and the neighbors we polled at the time didn't show an interest in a track, so the track wasn't included in the design for phase 2.
Okay, good. Thank you, Brian.
Was there another question that I missed?
Just about the wagon wheel configuration, Brian, and what it would take to find out how it's possible for us to go back to the 300-foot fences.
So we did have discussions with our consultant on this. We could certainly go back again formally if you'd like a formal report outlining the rationale as to where we're restricted. It wasn't necessarily to do with archaeological, but it was to do with environmentally sensitive lands and the areas of associated to the outskirts of the property. But if it's the desire of the task force, and if staff so directed to go back, we can certainly come back with a report, outlining the whys and the wheres and the hows.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. I see Dean has his hand up.
Just want to touch base on two points that Barb brought up. One being the track addition to the sports complex, the school and shelters that we're part of the task force on. Before that's considered, I'd like maybe something from staff to see the usage of the current tracks we have in the area to see if it mandates adding another track. I've been living in the West End for 20 years and I've never seen the tracks at capacity, all the time. Generally they're used for track meets, schools and stuff like that, which is, maybe a dozen times a year. To add a track to the new complex. If it's not going to be used, seems like a stretch and an overpayment that, you know, I wouldn't consider it if the other tracks aren't at full capacity. And the other issue is the diamonds. We've talked about this. Seems like we're chasing our tail on this because we brought this up probably over a year ago to staff, and we've asked for a report. Now we're back here asking about a report that hasn't been presented or done up for us yet about moving to 300 yards. Now the issue at the time where there was a few trees that were deemed you know, worthy to keep, as opposed to having 4 dimes at 300 in the clover that we had it. So if it's a tree issue, you know, give me a chainsaw, I'll go out there at night and we'll get rid of the trees. You know, and can we get a timeline, Brian, if you're going to give us a staff report on why and how is it feasible to go back to the 300 for 4 diamonds? Can we put a date on that?
So through the chair to you, Dean, General Manager, Public Works. So what we can do is get a formal maybe amendment to the report that's going to be presented today to the committee for staff to report back with other report or memo in a month's time, say February 25th, a memo. We can just present that to the committee or forward that to the committee that details exactly what Brian said, the who, what, where, when of those diamonds, and really what are the constraints, the major constraints that led to this design. So I think if we've been talking about this for a year's time, let's get a formal request of staff through an amendment on that report, and we can bring that forward to you.
All right, can I make the amendment, or?
I'll leave that up to the clerk. I think it's when the report is in front of the committee.
Okay.
Yeah, through the chair, we're in the delegations portion of the meeting right now, so this is the opportunity for anybody to respond to Barb's question. The appropriate time for that amendment would be when item 4.1 is actually on the floor. So right now, we're still in the delegations part of the meeting.
Thanks, Chris. Any other question? Any other question for Barb? Barb, go ahead.
I've got something else that I almost forgot to ask. There was talk in some of the reports with regard to the special fund for the Shellard area. I think it was because of the land that was sold and so forth. What is that amount?
Anybody like to make a comment on that?
I'm not sure what the question is. Sorry.
So are
Okay.
we? Yeah. Sorry. Just for clarification, are we discussing the sale of the lands and the amount that we've received? Is that the question for?
Yes, I think I think Rick put in, there was a special fund to be set aside for the development of the sports complex, and you received more money than was anticipated. So there was some given back to some programs within the city. I'm just wondering what amount was left in that other fund. I'm not too sure exactly what its proper name is. Maybe Rick would know.
If I can, Chair, I can answer that.
Please do, Joelle.
Okay, it's Joelle Daniels, Director of Finance. So what's remaining in that fund to go towards this particular project, or the 3 phases of this project? There's already been almost 5.2 million allocated for the first phase, and there's about another 14.6 million remaining to go towards the phase 2 and phase 3.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chris, how are we doing for time?
I think that's just about 10 minutes.
Okay, so moving forward, we're going to move on to items for consideration. 4.1, Southwest Community Center Project Update, Financial Impact. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get the motion on the floor, please? Motion by Councillor Weaver, seconded by Councillor Utley. I'd like to ask the staff for an overview on this for A, B, and C. Who would like to make that presentation for us?
Good, Chair. So I can speak briefly to the report, and then I'll just ask Brian Hughes and Lee Sordo to step in for their particular areas. So what you have in front of you is a report that summarizes where we are with phase 1, 2, and 3. As you know, phase 1 has been designed and ready for tender. We are doing the archaeological study, which is currently on hold. We've winterized the site, and we're moving forward over the winter season, to strategize on how to move forward with the phase 1. Phase 2, we've got budget approval on Tuesday from council in terms of in the amount of $1.5 million to start the design of phase 2. And in regards to phase 3, as you know, the school board did announce, made an announcement for funding. And I'll leave it to Lise, because there's some noise in the background, but I'll leave it to Lise I think somebody fell down the stairs. So Lisa, I'll leave it to you to just give an update on phase 3.
Lisa, over to you.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
So yeah, in October, the school board did receive an announcement that they received funding for accelerated funding, actually, to build the schools, and they did get some funding for the Southwest school to be built, the elementary school. So since then, we have been meeting at least monthly with the Grand Area District School Board project team to go over the various different space requirements for the shared area. We've been looking at the land as well, space requirements for that. So the report provides a bit an overview of what we've discussed so far, some of the spaces that we've been looking at. We are looking at putting the community center in here, as well as the library, and then the school has their space requirements. And within the community center, there are various different spaces that'll be included in there, including gymnasium, some multi-purpose space, some offices as well. And we're also looking at, we've been, as through the city, looking at putting in a decentralized service location for the community services and social development group, as well as the early years Ontario programs. So we've been delineating the space requirements for those as to try and figure out what the overall footprint will be. They have identified that the intent is to accelerate the timelines for building the school. So they do have the desire to have the school built hopefully for the 2023 September school year start, but by preferably no later than January 2024. We do feel this is a very aggressive and ambitious timeline, considering that we do need to go through site plan approval and a major rezoning amendment before the construction can begin. So we can do that in conjunction with doing the design as well. So we'll try to keep that moving along as best we can. We do feel that there is sufficient budget allocated right now for the community center project and for the library branch as well. And the area for the institution that's been delineated, however, might have to be revisited. So we will be looking at the overall master plan to determine how that can be laid out in a more effective way to provide the space requirements that they're looking for. And that's pretty much it as an overview.
I can speak to the other item on the report. Indeed mentioned about the winterization of the site. So that deals with the archaeological studies. The site has to be secured through the winter with various shoring and other devices to protect the exposed sites that haven't been completed. So the site has been winterized, and it's safe and waiting for the spring or the summer. With regards to phase 2, the original master plan for the park outlined the items that you see in the report as part of phase 2. So this was through community consultation at the time, worked with the neighborhood association as well. And the desire of the community at the time was for a couple sports fields, basically soccer and football. There was a discussion originally for them to be turf. And then as the discussions progressed, there was an interest in exploring the possibility of one being artificial. And the rationale for the artificial was there was also a desire, again, that came from the community with regards to some sort of indoor sports complex, because between the county and the city, I think we're kind of lacking in an indoor training facility where athletes or minor sports groups can play and train through the winter seasons. So that was explored at a very high level. And I think we were looking at, if memory serves, kind of an aired structure that could be removed in the summer, the field used, and then reinstated, installed in the winter. And I think the cost was around 1.8 million at the time, if memory serves. So that was just an option that we were directed to consider. In addition to that, there's a field house in phase 2 that includes a washroom building and some change rooms and some storage areas, mechanical room, because the idea was there would be some sort of refrigerated ice surface there, be it a trail or be it a rink that you could actually play hockey on. That was included as a concept in the design. In addition to that, the playground, multi-seasonal play area, a skate park or a scooter park, and some sort of pump track was also considered, along with a picnic shelter. Some multi-purpose courts that I spoke of earlier. The actual hockey rink would serve as, ball hockey in the summer, ice hockey in the winter, and potentially basketball and any other kind of sport you wanted to play in that on that court, along with a splash pad. So that kind of, completed phase 2 of the project. And I think that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Open the floor up to any questions. Councillor Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we get to the point where there is a design, are we going to be able to make sure that this committee is able to see that and comment on it before it gets its final approvals?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would definitely say yes.
Great, thank you. And specifically for phase 2, that phase is sort of ripe for potential opportunities for sponsorship or donors to take part in participating in building our community. So have we looked at any strategies about the naming rights or any other type of sponsorship processes that we could see if anyone's interested in to help pay for phase 2?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not at this time, we have not.
Is that something that we intend on doing, or is it something that we need direction to do, Brian?
Through you, Mr. That's a good question, Councillor. Probably need direction to do it, as it's probably something that another, I'm not sure who would undertake it. So we could certainly consider it if we're given direction to do so.
Okay, so then the question leading to that would be, is it appropriate to do that at this meeting, or should a resolution come forward to council for that decision? I guess, Chris, if the clerks could maybe chime in to let us know what the best process would be.
Through the chair, if the direction you're seeking is germane to the main motion that's on the floor, I would suggest an amendment to that would be appropriate. From there, go on a CAWA agenda as a task force report with this recommendation.
Okay, so Chris, with your help, could you help me wordsmith a amendment asking the city to also seek out sponsorships and donor opportunities for phase 2 and phase 3 for that matter?
Duly noted.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I still have a couple more questions, Mr. Chair, but I think we'd probably have to move that on the floor and then vote on it.
Yep, that sounds like a great idea. So I'd like to move a vote about having that amendment added to the report. Can I have a mover, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to move that.
Okay, Councillor Weaver, seconded by Councillor Utley. So moving forward, are there any other, sorry.
All in favor?
Oh, sorry, let's have a vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
And just 2 more things if I could, Mr. Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. So it's been mentioned a few times now that the city and the county lack any indoor sports fields. And I know that's something that was on the county's Parks and Rec master plan I believe it's also in ours. So I'm wondering if there's been any formal discussion with the county about chipping in to be, pay for part of this this dome. And then I would imagine we would be able to work out a deal where it doesn't matter if you're county or your city, it's going to be one price for everyone to use that facility. So has that been brought up yet?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor, no, it hasn't at this time, because I think it's safe to say we weren't really sure if the dome was going to go or not go and be in the plan. It was kind of a conceptual possibility, but if we're so directed to investigate, we can certainly do that.
So I think investigating those options is important, because we don't actually have the funding to do a domed roof in a turf field at this point. So we would need to allocate some additional funding. And I don't think in today's climate, going back to the taxpayer to ask for that money is going to be something that I'd be willing to do personally. I don't know about any other members of council, but I think it would be important for us to at least try to see if there's any opportunities out there. So would that be another amendment then that would need to come forward?
Chris?
Through the chair, can you just clarify the request that is being made right now?
Yes, it's to have a formal discussion with the County of Brant to see if there's any interest in participating in the build of a domed sports field that both communities would be able to use.
Through the chair, I would suggest that be done through the form of an amendment.
Okay, so I'd like to make this amendment as well. So I'd like to put this on the floor as an amendment. So initiated by Councillor Weaver. I'd like to get a seconder. Dean, is that you waving your hand? Dean will second it. I'd like to call a vote. All in favor?
Can we discuss, Mr. Chair,
Certainly.
before we vote? I think it's great to approach the county. I suspect that their answer may be they already have a domed facility at the former SILAPS facility, which is, I think, for multiple uses. So I think it's worth asking, but we'll see what the reply is. Thank you.
So as far as questions are concerned regarding a multi-sport facility, I have a few as the chair too. Domes are great, but they are fairly limited to the types of sports that can be played underneath them. I think that if we were to approach as a committee or as the city as a whole in regards to a multi-sport facility, it'd have to be a little bit more rigid. I wouldn't want to ask them for something that is just an indoor sports field where you could only have one or two sports, whether it's football or soccer. I think that it would need to incorporate, if you're going to go big, then go big. The idea of an indoor track where it's indoors, where people can actually walk around it in inclement weather, but could also be used for not only track, but Special Olympics could also use the interior of the facility. A dome's a little bit difficult, but I think if we're going to travel down that road, I think that a multi-sport facility should be, that would be my recommendation to ask the county for help on. I think they'd be more supportive of a larger facility than just a dome for the West End. It's just an opinion. So now I lost track of where we are in terms of the amendment. So Councillor Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think if there's no more questions, we would vote. And then I just have one more comment I'd like to make after the vote, please.
Yeah. So I'd like to put forth a vote on this amendment. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. I notice here that Mr. Huff, I understand you have an amendment that you would like to make as well, formally. You need to unmute your mic.
Great. Can everybody hear me now?
We're here now. You almost got Bueller.
All right. Oh, nice. The amendment I'd like to make is regards to the Four Diamonds being 300 feet. If we can ask the staff for a report and put a date on it of February 25th to have this report. We've discussed it in the past. I thought we've already made the motion, but no report has been generated since then. So I'd like to make a motion on the floor to have a report generated on making those 4 diamonds 300 feet so we can utilize the diamonds for tournaments the way it was supposed to.
Thanks, Dean. So Dean's put that amendment on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Utley. I'd like to call to a vote. All in favor of adding this amendment?
Through the chair, if I can, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's
It's-
okay.
It's just the timeline of February 25th. What's going to happen with this recommendation? It's going to go to Cowaway at the February 2nd meeting.
Mhm.
The committee is going to vote on the task force report. Then it goes to City Council to be ratified at the February 23rd or 22nd meeting. So staff aren't really going to have the formal direction from council to proceed with this report until late February, formally. So I'm not too sure if the mover of the motion wants to change the timeline of the report back date.
Dean, I see your hand up.
Yeah. Okay. Through you, Chair. Do we have a timeline that we can discuss that might be more feasible for staff to get the report? Like, I could just throw out a date, but Chris, maybe you have a better idea of when that report could be generated, and maybe offer up a date that we should be looking to have that in our hands.
I'd probably look at staff for that. I see CAO Brian Hutchinson and DR on the line right now, so I'll let them.
If I can, Mr. Chair, through you, I would suggest that you make the motion, and the next meeting we plan is April 2nd, 2021. We could have it done and completed by then. Basically, it'd be approved February 23rd. The council gives us a month to prepare the report and have it to you on April 2nd.
I'm fine with April 2nd. If that's doable for the city, that's fine.
Yep,
So
that was
make
what I
a,
was gonna say.
Go ahead.
Sounds good to you as well?
Yeah, I was coming on to say the same thing. The next meeting, we can have that ready for you.
Okay. So we'll say April 2nd would be the date. Dean, do you want to change your amendment to April 2nd then?
yeah, just change the amendment date from the 25th February to April 2nd on the report from staff on the allocation of 300 feet for diamonds on the 4 fields.
Okay.
Does that work?
So we need a seconder here. Be Councillor Utley. Call to a vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Are there any other questions in the main motion of any of the amendments that we've made? Councillor Weaver?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for staff, I'm wondering if it would maybe be prudent for us to come up with a decision matrix or a decision catalog of the decisions that we've made as a task force. I do remember we talked about the fields and why they couldn't be 300. And then there was some discussions about maybe they could, but I think it would just be great for new task force members, because remember, this is a marathon. We're not here for a sprint. This will probably be in place for several more years as we continue to develop this area. So I'm wondering if it's possible for us to have a decision catalog that this committee would be able to reference so we can see what exactly we voted on and what we have brought forward. Is that something that the city would be able to do?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I think the short answer is yes, Councillor Weaver. And I would also suggest that in addition to a decision matrix, I think this is friendly, as well as I think for all our purposes, myself included, is what the delegator suggested is what the original people suggested, the original citizens suggested, and we're supposed to be in the park. So that also would be good to juxtapose the matrix to that as well.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Ken, I see your hands up.
Yes, thank you, Jay. Kind of a question for staff and whether this would be appropriate, but kind of addressing the delegations comments about possibly becoming a member of the task force. Obviously, that's a council through the appointments committee process. I'm just wondering if it'd be in order for this committee to amend this resolution further to include that be explored to look at the membership of the task force in light of the shifting changes to this project and the moving around of phases to represent. I know the ball diamonds were considered to be a huge priority in the first place, and we have members of the task force that represent that very well. But as the other components come on, and a member of the Shellers Lane Neighborhood Association is interested, just any process there for if any this task force would have any option to make a recommendation there.
So Ken, I'm not sure the clear direction here. So are you asking if we should be adding personnel to the task force?
Well, the question is, can this task force make a recommendation for the city's appointments committee to explore adding to the task force? So under this committee's purview or task force to add to it, that's up to appointments committee and council. So would it be appropriate for us to make a recommendation to do so?
Okay, I'm not sure the process on that. Chris, can you provide some insight on that for us?
Through the chair, I suggest if the task force is interested in doing that they would wait until the notices of motion portion of the agenda. From there, because our procedure bylaw states that we have to have prior notice of resolutions, the committee would have to pass a motion to waive the rules of providing notice to consider a resolution, and that would require 2/3 vote. But from there, after voting on the motion to waive the rules, that motion can be introduced and ratified here at this task force. From there, it could form part of the task force report that'll go to Cowaway. So it's up to the committee whether there's an appetite for that. It'd be better in the notices of motion portion of the agenda and requires 2/3 vote.
Thanks, Chris. Jennifer Cisti is also a member of the neighborhood committee. Is there any comments, or would she like to add anything to that, or no?
Yeah, I put my hand up. So,
oh, sorry, I didn't see it, Jennifer.
As he was talking about that, I mean, it's myself personally, I don't want to see Barb join this task force. I feel that I've represented SNA on this task force fine to to this point, and I had already discussed with her that I plan to continue to be on this task force, and there's going to be a meeting of the Scheller Neighborhood Association in a few days from now, which she wants to discuss this issue. And I'm going to recommend to the committee to that executive that I just remain on it, and that kind of Barb keeps her hands out of this for now.
So I think my recommendation as the chair is you guys can sort that out on your end and then let us know how it fares. And then we can make a decision as a committee moving forward after that. But I'm not sure that that's something that we want to wade into at this point. Is that fair, Jen? We'll have your meeting and then you guys can decide who will represent, or if you want to have multiple representatives, and then we can address it at that point.
Well,
fair?
that's yes, that's her plan, is she wants multiple because she wants to have her say, but we don't necessarily agree in the executive that the way she presents the information is the best way to go. So I think we, as a executive of SNA, we need to discuss that before we make that decision, I think.
Okay. Thanks, Jennifer. All right. Do I need to do anything else on this? Seems no one else has any other vote. I'd like to move on to 4.2 for the procedure bylaw requirements. I'd like to ask the deputy clerk for an overview. Chris, are you there with us?
Yep. Through the chair, I would just suggest that we vote on the main motion as amended from 4.1, and then I could happily provide an overview of the procedure bylaw requirement.
Okay, sorry about that. I thought, yeah, so seems we don't have any other votes. We're just gonna have the vote on the amendment. Overall, can I have a mover for the amendment?
I believe the amendments have already been put on the floor. I think we just have to vote on the item as amended now, Mr. Chair.
Let's have a vote then. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Now we can go to 4.2. 4.2, Chris, can you have an overview for us?
Yep, certainly. Through the chair, this is new. It's a bylaw requirement that council amended our procedure bylaw to require task forces to set a schedule of meetings, which we have. The task force at their September meeting passed a motion to have quarterly meetings. And the second requirement is for the task force to set goals on how they plan to achieve their mandate within the specified time of the task force. I was able to append the terms of reference to the agenda. This task force and council approved the Southwest Task Force terms of reference in 2019. The terms of reference are fairly extensive and detailed. So I appended that to the agenda, and it's really up to the task force to determine whether or not they feel that those terms of reference are sufficient in meeting with those requirements. So I will leave that for the committee to decide.
Okay. So as far as the procedural bylaw, I'd like to make a move and a seconder to receive the update as this information. Does anybody have any questions about it? I don't see any questions on the floor. Oh, I do see one. Councillor Wall.
Yeah, sorry. If I'm not mistaken, I think we have to set a schedule for our meetings. I think that's what we're supposed to do here. So I would, if everyone is agreed, I mean, we would just meet once a month at a date.
We did last meeting, I believe.
Yep,
Mr.
we did, Councillor Wall. We decided that we were going to meet quarterly. So those meetings have been set, and that's why the April 2nd or April 5th date was the next one.
I apologize. Thank you.
Ken? I like the waving, like actual waving better. I'm missing these hands repeatedly and I feel terrible, but
yeah.
This I don't miss.
You got mine as soon as I put it up there. You're doing a great job.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah. Just commenting, I think quarterly is great. We meet the requirement by the sounds of it. Because as alluded to by staff earlier, through their report, it's a pretty aggressive timelines. So at this point, probably quarterly remains adequate, but at some point that schedule may need to be amended to make sure things keep moving and deadlines are met as things flow, because they are aggressive timelines.
And I'd have to agree, Ken. I mean, I don't want to have meetings for the sake of having meetings, right? If quarterly we come into a scenario where there's no changes, then there's a lot of resources that go into putting together these meetings. And to me, if it's not an effective use of resources, then there's no sense doing it. Councillor Weaver, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in reference to item B, I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to maybe ask staff to come up with some of these timelines where we're hitting some of our critical points that then we could possibly pass at the next meeting.
Sorry, so I'm looking at where are we seeing B?
So procedural bylaw requirements, every task force at its first meeting shall, there's an A and there's a B.
Gotcha.
And B, identify specific task and report back dates in order to complete its mandate within the term identified by council, a copy of which shall be appended to each task force agenda and updated to reflect status of the identified task. So at the end of the day, I think staff is far more capable of providing those dates where we're trying to hit those milestones than our committee would be able to come up with just through discussion. So I think it would perhaps be appropriate to maybe defer this if that's possible. And at the next meeting, have staff bring back those timelines for us.
So do we put forth a vote on that?
I would just request maybe to ask staff if they feel that's the best way to move forward.
I see India and Brian are back in.
Sure, we can do that. It goes hand in hand with providing that breakdown that we've discussed earlier as well. So we can definitely bring that back for the next committee.
So I guess to the clerk's department, would it be appropriate for me to ask for a deferral for one cycle of our meetings then, of this item?
Through the
Or is
chair,
it-
that'd be appropriate.
Okay, so item A isn't time sensitive, Chris?
Through the chair, I believe we've already addressed item A at our September meeting when we set the meeting schedule. So really all that you're deferring is clause B.
Okay. After any other questions, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to move that deferral.
Okay. So we're going to move the deferral. Do we have a seconder? Dean is the seconding. And let's put it to a vote. All in favor of the deferral? Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, I got to find out where I am now here. Consent. So can I please have a mover and a seconder for the minutes from the Southwest Task Force, September 30th? Ken is the mover, seconded by Councillor Utley. Are there any errors or omissions that we have missed out on this? All right, I'd like to call a vote to accept the minutes. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carried. So there's no other notices of motions for today. I'd like to move to 7 unless there's any other comments. Number 7 is I'd like to now adjourn the meeting until April 2nd and wish everybody a safe and happy next, hopefully till the 10th of February, and we can kind of have some of this lifted so I can get back to, I'd like to go to lunch at some point soon.
Yeah.
So thanks everybody for your time tonight, and be safe.
Thank you, Jay,
Thanks,
and
everyone.
everyone.
I wanted
Good
to
job.
also apologize. Sorry, I was late. Won't make it a habit.
Thanks, Councillor Wall.